I started working at the brewery because I needed money, not because I gave a damn about beer. I just moved back to my hometown after college, a few years in Seattle that left me with a useless degree, credit card debt, and absolutely no clue what the hell I was doing. I was crashing at my brother's place, applying to anything that wasn't in a cubicle, when my friend Mason texted me. Ironclad Brewery is hiring. Chill place, decent tips. You still alive? That was enough for me. The place was tucked in an old industrial building on the edge of downtown. Exposed beams, warm Edison bulbs, the whole reclaimed wood vibe. The first time I walked in, I could smell the hops before I saw the bar. It was low-key, a little hipster, and honestly, way nicer than I expected for a place that paid minimum wage plus tips. I filled out the application with a dull Sharpie, handed it to the girl at the bar, and 5 minutes later, she waved over this guy. "Jesse, this is Tyler, new applicant." He stepped out from behind the tanks, wiping his hands on a rag. At first, I thought he was one of the brewers. He had that rugged look, the kind of guy who could fix a carburetor and then bench press it for fun. Late 30s, maybe. Dark hair, short beard, ink on both arms just peeking out from under the sleeves of a black ironclad t-shirt. But his eyes are what got me. Calm. Heavy-lidded. Almost too serious for someone running a brewery. "Tyler," he said, nodding once. "You ever bartend before?" "Little bit." I lied. He didn't seem to care. "You know how to hustle?" "Yeah," I said. He held my stare for a second, just long enough to make my pulse shift gears. "All right," he said. "Can you start Thursday?" And just like that, I had a job. The first few shifts were a blur of tap handles, foam spills, and trying to fake confidence while customers listed off beer styles like they were ordering fine wine. Jesse was always somewhere nearby, not hovering, just watching. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it was always direct. "Keep your rag in your back pocket, not the counter. Don't wipe the inside of the pint glass. Run the card before you pour the flight." The corrections should have annoyed me. But they didn't. He wasn't condescending. He just expected you to be better. Like he'd already seen you screw up, but he also believed you'd figure it out fast. And then there was the way he moved. I don't know how else to put it. Jesse didn't waste steps. He was smooth, efficient. He could be lifting a 60-pound keg and still look like he was in control of the entire room. And somehow, even though he wasn't loud or flashy, everyone knew when he walked in. It was like gravity shifted a little. I caught myself watching him way too often. One night, during a slow hour, I was stacking pint glasses when I looked over and saw him adjusting the pressure gauges in the back room. He had one hand braced against the metal tank, the other fiddling with the wrench. His shirt rode up slightly, revealing a slice of skin and a waistband, and my dumb brain short-circuited for a second. "Yo," Mason muttered beside me, popping a cap off a bottle. "You good?" "What?" "You've been staring at Jesse for like a full minute." I looked away too fast. "Shut up," he laughed. "Dude, you've got the look." "What look?" "The look like you're trying to figure out what flavor his sweat is." I wanted to punch him, but he wasn't wrong. Still, nothing about Jesse gave anything away. He didn't flirt. He didn't get personal. He didn't mention dating or exes or anything that might hint at what side of the fence he was on. If he noticed me watching, he never said a word about it. Until one night, that changed. It was a Wednesday. Dead. Just Jesse and me closing. I was wiping down the bar when he called out from the back. "Can you give me a hand in the storage room?" "Yeah," I said, tossing the rag into the bucket. The back room was dim, filled with stacked crates, spare taps, kegs, cleaning supplies. Jesse was crouched beside a shelf, fiddling with a loose bracket. "This thing's about to fall," he said, not looking up. "Can you hold it while I tighten it?" I knelt beside him, bracing the frame as he worked the wrench. Our shoulders touched. Not a big deal, right? Tight space. Small room. But it felt like something. He glanced at me sideways. Barely, but his eyes lingered just a second too long. "You settling in okay?" he asked. "Yeah, it's good," I said. "Thanks for hiring me." He tightened the bolt, stood up, wiped his hands again. Then he said, "You're fast. You pay attention." I straightened up, trying not to overthink it. "I try." He turned to me, and for the first time, his expression shifted. "You also stare a lot." I froze. He didn't smile, didn't tease, just said it like it was a fact. My heart did this weird stumble in my chest. "I didn't mean," I started. "I didn't say stop," he said. Then he brushed past me, slow, close, shoulder to shoulder, and walked back out to the bar. And I just stood there, in that back room, completely wrecked. After that night in the back room, everything felt different. I was still doing the same work, stacking kegs, pouring flights, wiping down counters, but every time Jesse was near, it was like I could feel him before I even saw him. I'd catch glimpses of him in the corner of my eye, leaning over the tap lines, adjusting a keg, or just standing there watching the floor. And I couldn't stop myself from watching back. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was tension. Something electric that seemed to hum in the air whenever we were alone. The next day, we had a rare, slow lunch shift. A handful of locals, the soft hum of the neon sign, and the faint smell of malt in the air. I was wiping tables when Jesse came over, sliding his hands casually into his pockets. "You look tense," he said, voice low, not mocking, just observing. I froze mid-wipe. What? "You." Tense, shoulders tight, jaw tight, eyes darting around like you're looking for an excuse to leave. I laughed nervously. "Nope, just tired." He smirked, that crooked, knowing smirk that made my stomach do flips. "Sure, tired." He leaned against the counter, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. His hand brushed mine when he moved, light contact, and it sent a jolt straight through me. I tried to act normal, wiping the same table again like my life depended on it. "You ever come in early?" he asked suddenly. I shook my head. "Not really." "Why?" "Sometimes, when it's quiet," he said, voice dropping a notch. "I like to check the tanks, make sure everything's right. You should come with me sometime." I blinked. Did he just invite me to follow him into the tank room? Alone? Sure, I said, voice too high. "Yeah, I'd like that." He nodded, straightening up. "Cool." Tomorrow morning. Before the rush. The next day, I showed up early, heart hammering. The brewery smelled warmer than usual, the malt sweeter, and the air thick with humidity from the fermentation tanks. Jesse was already there, crouched over one of the smaller tanks, checking the gauge. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Morning," I mumbled. We moved quietly between the tanks. The space was narrow, warm, and smelled faintly of yeast and hops. He showed me how to check the pressure, how to clean the valves, how to listen to the hiss of carbonation. At some point, he stepped behind me to adjust a knob I couldn't reach. Our bodies brushed, arm to arm, hip to hip, and I felt it again. That surge of heat, that rush in my chest. I could feel him, smell him, and my brain went fuzzy. "Tyler," he said softly, right by my ear. I turned slightly. His eyes were on mine, not judging, not teasing, just intense. "You've got to be careful in here," he added. "A lot of guys don't notice how close they get to the equipment or to each other." I swallowed hard. "I'll be careful." He smiled, just a little. A private smile, meant for no one else but me. Then he stepped back, just a step, but it was enough to make my chest ache from wanting more. "All right," he said, glancing at the clock. "I've got to check the logger line. You can handle the rest for a bit?" I nodded, pretending to focus on the gauges, but my hands were shaking slightly. I'd been alone with him in the back room, in the tanks, and nothing had happened. And yet, everything had happened. I caught myself staring again, like an idiot, watching him move between the tanks, adjusting valves, bending over slightly, chest just brushing the metal. And I realized I couldn't stop. Not now, not ever. Something was building, and I had no idea where it would lead. But I was terrified and thrilled. The next week passed in a blur of shifts, tips, and stolen glances. Every interaction with Jesse felt layered, like there was an unspoken game being played just between us. I tried to focus on the work, stacking kegs, wiping down counters, but it was impossible. Every time he moved in my line of sight, every casual brush of our arms, every low, quiet word he spoke, it set me on edge. Then Friday came, the slowest shift of the week. The kind of evening where the tap room hums with just a few locals, the sound of glasses clinking, faint indie music playing over the speakers, and nothing else to do but breathe and listen. Jesse called me to the back room again. My chest tightened the moment I stepped through the door. "I need you to help me move some empty kegs to the corner," he said, voice casual, like he wasn't aware of the effect he had on me. I nodded, trying to keep it together. The space was tight, warm, faintly metallic from the tanks and cleaning chemicals. I bent down to grab a keg, and he was right behind me, adjusting something on the shelf. His hand brushed against my shoulder, again, light but deliberate. My stomach lurched. "Careful," he said softly, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him. "I'm fine," I muttered, trying not to shake. "You're lying," he said, the corner of his mouth tilted up. And I don't like lies in my brewery. I wanted to laugh, to say something smart, but my words stuck. My brain had gone soft, melted somewhere between the pressure of his chest near mine and the smell of his cologne, something earthy and faintly spicy that clung to the room. He stepped even closer. Not too close to touch, but just enough that the tension was unbearable. "Relax," he said, voice low. "I'm not going to hurt you." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I know." Then he reached for a keg, and our hands brushed, fingers grazing. "It wasn't accidental," he lingered. I could feel him, and it was like static electricity crawling up my arm, straight into my chest. "You're staring again," he murmured. I froze. "Yeah," I admitted, voice barely audible. "I can't help it." He didn't respond immediately, just stepped back, watching me, letting the words hang between us. Then, slowly, a smile crept across his face. Not a big grin, just a small, private, knowing smile that made my heart race. "You should be careful," he said finally. "If I catch you staring too long, I might have to do something about it." I wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to lean in, feel closer, just know. But I didn't. I nodded dumbly, blinking at him like an idiot. He chuckled softly. "All right, finish moving those, then wash your hands. I'll check the fermenters before the night ends." I couldn't focus, couldn't move, couldn't breathe normally. I spent the rest of the night half watching him, half pretending to work, heart hammering every time he leaned over a keg, muscles flexing under his shirt. And when he finally left the back room, closing the door behind him, I realized I wasn't just attracted to him, I was obsessed. Something was about to happen between us. I didn't know what or when, but I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't resist him, and neither, I had the sinking suspicion, could he resist me. The next few days felt like walking through fog. Every shift, every glance, every incidental touch in the cramped back room made my pulse spike. I caught myself imagining what it would feel like if Jesse leaned closer, if his hand brushed mine and didn't stop. It was Thursday when it finally happened. We were closing, alone. The tap room dark, except for the faint glow of the overhead bulbs reflecting off the steel tanks. The last customers had left half an hour ago, and the faint hiss of the fermenters was the only sound besides our footsteps. "Can you help me move some crates?" Jesse asked, voice low. I nodded, wiping my palms on a towel, suddenly aware of every inch of space between us. The back room smelled of yeast and hops, warm, almost suffocating in the best way. He was already there, hands on his hips, surveying the stacked crates. His t-shirt clung to his chest, sleeves rolled slightly, and the way he moved, leaning, stretching, lifting, was mesmerizing. "Careful with that one," he said, reaching past me to steady a crate. His arm brushed my side. I froze. He didn't pull away. "You're staring," he murmured, his breath brushing against my ear. I swallowed. I can't help it. There was a pause. Then, slow, deliberate, he stepped closer. My back pressed against the shelf, the cool metal behind me, his heat in front of me. I could feel the tension building between us, like steam in the fermenters. You know, he said quietly, low enough that it felt intimate. You shouldn't stare like that unless you're ready for what might happen. My chest tightened. What do you mean? He leaned in just slightly, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. His hand hovered near mine, brushing it ever so lightly. It sent a jolt straight through me. I mean, he whispered, voice husky, that sometimes tension like this has to go somewhere. Otherwise, it's wasted energy. My brain short-circuited. Before I could respond, his hand finally rested on mine. Not gripping, not pressing, just there, deliberate, teasing. I could feel his fingers against my skin, the heat from his palms seeping through the fabric of my shirt. My entire body tensed. You sure? I breathed. His gaze was intense, unreadable. I'm sure. And then, just like that, our lips met. Not a quick brush, not a fleeting touch. A kiss. Soft at first. Testing, then deeper, hungrier, as if the weeks of stolen glances and unspoken desire were all exploding at once. I was pressed against the shelf, hands tangled in his shirt, heart hammering so loud I thought it might give me away. The world outside the brewery, the taps, the lights, the faint smell of malt, ceased to exist. There was only him, only us, only the heat building between our bodies. He pulled back slightly, just enough to look into my eyes. You've been watching me for weeks, he murmured, voice low. Why fight it? I couldn't speak, couldn't even think straight. I just shook my head, letting him pull me closer again, lips pressing against mine, fingers tracing the line of my jaw. The back room, the crates, the dim light, they weren't just background anymore. They were part of the moment, part of this perfect, heated, electric connection that I'd been craving from the first day I saw him. And as he pressed against me, slowly, deliberately, I realized one thing. I wasn't going to stop watching him anymore. Because now, he wasn't just my boss. He was mine. After that first kiss, everything changed. I walked into work the next day with a weird mix of anticipation and nerves, my chest tight and my palms sweaty. I couldn't focus on pouring beers or cleaning taps because every time Jesse walked past, I felt that spark again, the same heat that had hit me in the back room. He didn't make a move immediately, didn't comment, just watched. A small, knowing smirk sometimes tugged at the corner of his mouth when he thought I wasn't noticing. And I wasn't, not really. I was obsessed with noticing. It wasn't long before we were back in the back room. This space had always felt small, intimate, but now it felt charged with something almost electric. You've been thinking about it all day, haven't you? Jesse asked softly, leaning against the shelves, arms crossed. I froze, wiping a keg like I hadn't heard him. Maybe a little, I admitted, my voice low. He stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth radiating off him. Good? He said, and it wasn't playful. It was serious, deliberate. Because I've been thinking about it too. My chest tightened so much I thought I might collapse. You, what? I've been wanting this, he admitted, his voice dropping. Since the first day you walked in here, since I caught you watching me. I blinked. I didn't think. You didn't think what? He murmured, tilting his head, eyes locked on mine. That I noticed? That I wanted you too? My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to say yes, to tell him exactly how long I'd been watching him, imagining him, craving him. But words failed me. So instead, I let him close the gap. We pressed together again, slower this time, savoring the warmth, the tension, the raw heat building in the tight space between shelves and kegs. His hands trailed over my back, fingers tracing lines that left goosebumps in their wake. My hands found his waist, gripping lightly, marveling at how solid he felt, how real he was. God, he whispered against my ear, you have no idea how long I've waited for this. I didn't respond with words. I kissed him again, harder, hungrier, feeling the heat of his body, the press of his chest against mine, the brush of stubble against my jaw. Every second stretched until it felt like minutes, the rest of the world gone. And then his hand slipped lower, brushing against the waistband of my jeans. My breath caught. He didn't stop. He just lingered there, testing, teasing, and my body answered before my brain could even protest. "You're insane," I whispered, and it wasn't a reprimand. It was awe, disbelief, longing. "No," he murmured back, voice low and gravelly. "We're exactly where we're supposed to be." The air in the back room grew thick. The smell of hops, metal, and heat mixed with the electricity between us. The tight space, the dim light, it all became part of this perfect, secret moment. I realized then that it wasn't just lust anymore. It was something more. Desire, yes, but also connection, intensity. The kind of thing that sneaks up on you and changes everything without warning. And as he leaned closer again, pressing his forehead to mine, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. Not ever. The next few shifts were a mix of adrenaline and distraction. Every time Jesse passed by, my chest tightened. Every casual brush of his hand, every glance that lingered just a little too long, sent sparks straight through me. We didn't talk about what had happened in the back room. Not directly. But the tension lingered, thick and unspoken, between every movement, every interaction. It was Friday night. The brewery was packed, music loud, customers laughing, the hum of conversation like a wave I could barely ride over. Mason was running drinks at the bar, tossing empty glasses into the sink, and I was juggling flights, trying not to spill. "Tyler," Jesse said, voice low, almost lost in the crowd. I turned slightly, catching him near the storage shelves. "Back room? Now." My stomach dropped. I nodded, slipping past customers, pretending like I had somewhere to be. The back room was dark, warm, and fragrant with yeast and hops. The shelves and kegs made the space tight, intimate, the perfect place for this. Jesse was already there, leaning against a keg, eyes glinting in the dim light. "You're tense," he murmured, stepping closer. I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed me. "Not fine," he countered. His hand brushed mine as he adjusted a crate, deliberate, teasing. My pulse spiked instantly. "You've been thinking about it all week, haven't you?" he asked softly. I swallowed. "Yes." "Good," he said, stepping even closer, pressing into me slightly. "Because I have too." Before I could even respond, he captured my lips again. This kiss was slower, more urgent, exploring. My hands went to his waist, pulling him closer, feeling the heat of his body, the solidity of him. And then my back hit the shelf behind me, cold metal pressing into my shoulder, his body trapping me. I realized I was dangerously aware of every sound. The distant laughter from the taproom, the hum of the tanks, the thump of my own heartbeat. His hand slid lower, grazing the front of my jeans, teasing, deliberate. I shivered, pressed closer. "You feel that?" he murmured, voice low, right by my ear. I nodded, breathless. "Yeah, good," he said, "because this isn't going to wait much longer." My fingers tangled in the fabric of his shirt, feeling every line of his chest, every curve of muscle. Heat pooled low in my stomach, chest pounding, and then he pulled back just enough to look at me, eyes dark, unreadable, but full of something. Promise, hunger, control. "This," he said, voice soft but firm, "is ours. Only ours. And if anyone comes in," he smirked, though it was dangerous, teasing, "they'll just have to wait." I nodded, breath hitching. I didn't need words, didn't need promises. I already knew. We moved together again, pressing close, hands exploring, the heat in the back room matching the heat building between us. Every second was stolen, every touch electric. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about desire. It was about connection, intensity, secrecy, and the thrill of wanting someone you shouldn't. I wasn't just watching him anymore. I was living for these moments. Every glance, every brush of skin, every quiet, electric second in the back room. And Jesse? I could tell he was feeling the same way. We were both caught, trapped in this tension we couldn't deny, in a room small enough to ignite every nerve, and we didn't want it to stop. Not ever. The following week was a blur. Every shift was a test of self-control, every glance a temptation, every accidental touch an electric jolt. The back room had become our secret world, the brewery itself a playground of tension and anticipation. I started showing up early, not for the work, but for him. Jesse would be there, checking tanks, adjusting gauges, and I'd catch myself just watching. It wasn't subtle anymore. I didn't want it to be. Every muscle, every movement, every quiet murmur of his voice pulled me in deeper. One evening, after closing, we lingered longer than usual. The tap room was dark, the hum of the fermenters filling the space. Jesse leaned against a keg, watching me stack empties. I could feel him before I even looked up, heat radiating, presence heavy, magnetic. "You've been avoiding the main room," he said softly, voice low, almost intimate. "I just wanted to finish," I said, trying to steady my voice. He smirked, taking a step closer. "We both know why." My chest tightened. "Yeah." Then, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of us, he closed the distance. Lips met lips again, slow, deliberate, electric. I pressed against him, every nerve on fire, hands tangled in his hair, heart hammering. The crates, the shelves, the faint smell of hops, it all disappeared. Only him, only us, only this moment. His hands roamed, exploring, teasing, gentle yet demanding. I shivered, pressed closer, breath hitching. "God, Jesse," I whispered. "You've wanted this as much as I have," he murmured back. "Every day." And he was right. Every stolen glance, every accidental brush, every second of tension had been leading to this. The back room, the heat, the intimacy. It wasn't just desire anymore. It was connection, intensity, chemistry that couldn't be ignored. We kissed until we were breathless, foreheads pressed together, hands tracing the curves of each other's bodies. The brewery was quiet, the hum of the tanks like a heartbeat in the background. And in that moment, I realized that I couldn't stop watching him. Not ever. Jesse pulled back slightly, eyes dark, unreadable, but full of warmth and something I'd never felt before. Ownership, but tender. "We need to be careful," he said. "Out there," he gestured toward the tap room. "People, they can't know." "Not yet." I nodded, chest heaving, still pressed against him. "I don't care," I admitted. "I just want you." He smiled, soft, private. "Then we'll take it one moment at a time. Here, there's no rush. No one else matters." And in that quiet, warm back room, surrounded by crates and tanks, I understood. This was just the beginning. Every shift, every glance, every secret moment would only pull us closer. Jesse wasn't just my boss. He was the one I couldn't stop thinking about, the one I couldn't stop wanting. And I didn't want to, because sometimes the heat you feel in the back room is the only kind of fire worth chasing.